everyone to our webinar, Your Business Supercharged. Very excited to have a conversation today with two very different types of businesses and share the wealth of knowledge that they've accumulated on how working with students has been meaningful for each of their businesses. Just before we get started, I wanted to give everybody a little bit of context as to what Ripen is. So we are a marketplace platform that helps companies and nonprofits connect with higher education so that the students can do projects for those businesses. The whole idea behind Ripen is to end graduate underemployment. So we want students to have the opportunity to connect with real world projects so that they can develop the skills they need to succeed in the workplace. So a little bit about our size. We work with about 220 post-secondary institutions, and that's in the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK, but primarily in the US and Canada. We have a network of about 10,000 companies that we work with, and as you'll see from our panelists today, they are both very diverse. We work with all shapes and sizes of businesses. But what we're most proud of is that since we've launched our platform, we've delivered over 57,000 student experiences. So those are all students that got to work with real world companies in their classrooms. So a bit about what types of experiences are. So Ripen is not like a traditional co-op or internship. We have 3 different types of experiences that we offer. All of them are project-based. So the first one is in-class projects. These are the types of projects that make a business the focus of the student classroom. So what that looks like is, let's say students are studying data analysis. Typically they would be looking at a data set that they downloaded off the internet. With Ripen, they can work with a real business that has a real data challenge and look at that data to give them actionable recommendations. And then you get to work directly with a professor and a group of students. For virtual internships, this is the type that's more like a co-op or internship, but it's still project focused. So let's say you want to redesign your HR onboarding manual, or you're looking to develop a social media campaign, you would be able to work with a student or a group of students directly to achieve that goal. And then last but not least is skills challenges. These are mostly used by our businesses straight for recruitment. So they're a different way for students to apply to jobs that allow them to showcase their skill set through showing you what they can do, as opposed to just showing you their resume and experience, which may look very similar to the other students in their classroom. So without further ado, we've got 2 amazing panelists with us here today, Vicky and Stacey. So I will ask both of you to introduce yourselves to the panel just before we get started. And Stacey, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I am a certified human resources professional. I work for Canada Life as part of the talent acquisition team, specifically for the Freedom 55 financial division. So for those of you that might not be familiar with Canada Life, the company was established way back in 1847, I want to say, and was one of the first domestic life insurance companies in Canada. And we provide insurance and wealth solutions to all of our customers across Canada. I joined the company back in 2011. I've had a few different roles before landing where I am now. My current position, I'm a talent acquisition advisor. And my main accountabilities are really focused on campus engagement, program development for Freedom 55, as well as our wholesaling team.
Vicky, do you want to go?
Sure. I own Coneybeare, which is a staffing and recruiting company in California, and I've been doing that for the past 30 years. I inherited the business very suddenly from my mother, and before that I had studied architecture. And so in 2007, I bought some land in Colombia, South America, where I used to live, where I'm creating a boutique eco resort as a way for me to explore my ideas about design and sustainability. And we also grow crops. And on the Ripen platform, I'm using students to work on projects for both of my businesses.
Well, thank you both for being here. So to kick us off, I wanted to hear a little bit more about why you decided to start working with students and what was appealing to you about working with a platform like Ripen. And Vicky, we'll start with you.
Sure. I don't know how I was introduced to Ripen, maybe through LinkedIn or an email, or somehow I got some information. It sounded intriguing. And then, you know, I got it. I became familiar with what it is the offerings are. And I thought, oh, I've got some projects that, you know, it'd be great to try to have some smart students work on. And, you know, we started out with two projects for my staffing and recruiting company. One was a business development project. Do you want me to go into this now, or is this fine to explain that? Okay. The business development project was a survey that we thought of doing it in-house, but, you know, everybody's busy and it wasn't taking off. And so we had two students conduct a survey about workplace hiring practices before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID to find businesses in our area. We had a mailing list of businesses in Southern California. And so we had the students, they put together the survey in an email form. At first they were going to call companies, but that didn't work out very well. They didn't get anybody to answer the calls. But in the email survey that they created, we got lots of really good information about which companies are hiring, what kinds of positions they're hiring for, you know, an overall view of how people were affected by COVID, because of course some people were devastated by it, some not so much, and others found opportunities there. And so, you know, we ended up with about 50 respondents, and it's a small sample, but it was really great information for us to then use when we go forward to contact those companies. So that business development survey was something that we thought was really powerful. And the other one was a website development. And unfortunately, you know, I couldn't find the password for our website because the guy that created it fell off the face of the earth. And so that took up some time before I could get a password to them. But in any case, they were a very knowledgeable group of adult students that had lots of industry experience and lots of other capabilities that they brought to the table. And they went through our website with a fine-tooth comb and came up with recommendations that were quite awesome.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And what about you, Stacey? I know your reason for working with students is a little bit different.
Yeah, so ours is kind of interesting in the sense that our talent acquisition team, or the team that I'm on, since we are only focused on recruiting for financial advisors, we're very different in terms of the strategies that we take on compared to our head office talent acquisition partners. Mostly because the type of roles that our head office team is posting for, they're admin type roles or consultants, stuff like that you would find all over like LinkedIn job boards and that kind of thing. But our team, since we're focused on such a narrow area of the business, and it takes a very different skill set for the type of people that we recruit, and we also find that we can't just post a job and have all of these wonderful candidates. We normally have to go out and find them. So when our team was put together, one of the things that we really realized is that we didn't have a campus recruitment strategy. It was actually non-existent. There was absolutely nothing that we were doing other than the typical career fair, which didn't really bring us that many great results all the time. And it was something that a lot of the directors across the country were coming to us saying that they were interested in getting involved on campus and getting in front of students and kind of talking about who we are, what we have to offer, and kind of like have those discussions post-graduation with those students to kind of figure out what their career opportunities might look like if they were interested in this kind of career path. So it was actually one of our directors based out of Vancouver at the time who introduced us to Ripen, and we went through a demo, and we kind of figured out that that was almost like the missing piece of the puzzle. It was almost like if we took on Ripen projects, we would be able to get all of those connections and really start breaking into the campus recruitment environment and just kind of start from ground zero and just kind of build it up from there.
Yeah, that's great. I'm interested to hear, Stacey, more about how you developed the types of projects, because I know for a lot of businesses, it's sometimes hard to come up with projects, especially because project-based learning in the classroom or challenge-based might be new. What was some of the things that you learned through the development of project process?
And that was probably the toughest part about our Ripen journey at the very beginning, was trying to identify the types of projects that we wanted to create and run with schools, because we needed to identify the type of courses that we wanted to work with, because we are using this as a recruitment strategy. Of course, our team has a bunch of different things that we could get students to work on to help solve other problems like social media campaigns and that kind of stuff. But because we want to use this as a recruitment tool, that kind of guided our creation method of the project, I guess. So it almost had to be beneficial from both sides. So from the professor and student side, they had to be able to achieve their learning objectives. It had to fit into the curriculum, but on the other side for us, it kind of had to get the students to showcase the skills that relate directly to a financial advisor if they were to pursue that kind of career opportunity after graduation. So for us, it was mostly, actually one of the bigger projects that we have run is our national recruitment strategy project that we've run with a couple different HR classes. So when we're doing recruitment, we don't necessarily look for students that are only in a business finance stream or business entrepreneurship. We kind of look at the entire business umbrella and say, okay, well, there might be some individuals in an HR course that exhibit the skills or personality that would align really well with financial advisors. So that kind of checked off that box. And then we're also getting them to review our current recruitment strategies and then either fine tune it or give us some brand new suggestions on things that we could potentially start doing to broaden our reach and start recruiting more people through different methods.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I love that the most about what Freedom 55 is doing. It's so interesting to get feedback from that group that you're trying to recruit themselves on how you would better be able to recruit them.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about you, Vicky, for your projects? What was your process for coming up with them?
For my staffing service, the two projects were the website development and the business development survey were already projects that we were trying to do ourselves and not getting much traction. And I was like, who do I hire? How do I do this? And so I just jumped in with those two projects because it was like, okay, well, we can have help with this and start moving forward with some, talented and smart people. And then in Columbia, I have other projects that I'm also working on, but I had been working on them like in the back of my head. So I needed to move things forward. And I have, a small farm and it's about 7 acres. And we've got an aloe vera crop and we've got 400 chocolate trees. And I'm also trying to decide whether or not I should plant non-psychoactive cannabis to produce CBD oil. So I'm working on getting the license to do that legally. In the meantime, I need to create a business plan. And first of all, I have no idea what's the, investment needed, the return on investment for the cannabis. For the chocolate, it's more like a passion project and something fun. But what do I do with all that chocolate that I get? I know basically how to collect it and ferment it and dry it. But then once I get the beans, the cocoa beans, what do I do? How do we refine it to make, high-end chocolates if I wanted to? Who would I sell it to? And so I need help thinking through that whole process and creating a strategic business plan. And then as well with the aloe vera, supposedly I have somebody who's going to buy the leaves from me to make juice, but that group has been very flaky in the past. They were going to you know, they sold me the aloe vera babies that were supposed to be ready in 18 months. Well, they weren't. They took, I don't know, 3 years. And, but then they, you know, their group fell apart and they didn't start their juice factory. And then they came back and said, okay, now we're going to start it. And then COVID happened. So I need alternate strategies. And so the aloe vera team is working on alternate strategies for me for that crop. So it's very interesting for me because it's a great learning process. As the students are learning, I'm learning too. And they're all good investigators, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I know the students that have worked with you have really enjoyed that process as well, because it is new for everyone. And I think that's part of the experience. I'm curious to hear from both of you more about whether or not this was your first time working on these types of projects with students and what you learned about some of the best tools and strategies for managing these projects and how to best work with students.
For me, I guess I definitely didn't have a full understanding of what a classroom-based project was from an employer perspective and what kind of that process would look like. And I really think for us, it was just kind of trying it out for the first project and seeing how it went, because there was no way that I think we were just going to know exactly what to do as soon as we signed up and did that first project. It was almost like transparency with the professor too. When you have your first project and you agree to work through it and kind of when the project kickoff date is and all that kind of stuff, like I was quite open with the professor saying, you know, this is the first project that we're running, and either they would say them too and we'd work through it together, or they were kind of a little bit more experienced and could guide me. And I find that just the partnership that you have with the professor and bouncing ideas off each other really helps the project move along pretty quickly. And for us, it was mostly just making sure that we were staying on top of the engagement on the Ripen platform too. So that took a little bit of practice as well, just to make sure that I was going on, answering any messages that were coming in through the messaging function, staying on top of any project proposals, going through the marketplace and that kind of thing. But yeah, I really think it's transparency and communication for us, and that was the best way that we found to be working with the students through the projects.
What about you, Vicky? Any lessons learned?
Yeah, you know, for us, what was really key is we did pay the fee up front to have somebody help us on the Ripen side. So we had a dedicated customer service person. And that was, for me, was really important because they helped us navigate the whole process. They helped us post things on the site because I'm not that technically savvy. But they also helped us reach out to universities that they think, oh, I think this would be a good project for, you know, this school or for this teacher we've worked with before. And so they brought those opportunities to us and made the whole thing much, much easier than trying to sift through, you know, all the projects that are listed and all the universities that are listed. So I would say that, you know, that for us was really key. And of course, you know, I think the real world in business is that, as Stacey said, you know, we are learning on the spot too, and figuring things out as we go along. And so that was definitely part of the process. And I think the students were all fine with just rolling with that and working with whatever we had. I mean, if it was like design a website, but we don't have the password to get in, or, you know, do this survey, but we've never done it before. And we think, you know, it might work like this. And here's, you know, a script that we created, but what do you think? It's a back and forth process, and definitely having regular meetings with the students was important.
Yeah, for sure. I think we typically tell our business partners as well that it's really important to be meeting with the students semi-regularly. Like it's definitely not a day-to-day thing, but I do feel like what you put into it is what you can expect to get out as well. We actually have a really good question. I think I'll take this one since it's specific to Ripen, but feel free to drop more questions in the chat or the Q&A. The question is, do you need to have a project in mind when you're joining Ripen? And definitely no. If you don't know what type of project you want to do, there's certainly lots of courses that will hopefully inspire some of that thinking. But also we have support from our team to help you design or think about what some projects might be for your business. And I don't know, Stacey and Vicky, if you can speak to that process as well of potentially coming up with new projects that you hadn't thought of before.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think, like I mentioned, it was probably the area that we spent a lot of time on at the very beginning, because it was something that we were unsure about or what kind of direction that we wanted to take. So I think the first big step for us was looking at our business and trying to figure out, okay, are there any areas that we think could use some fresh perspective? So even if it was something that we think was working perfectly and it couldn't be any better, I would say now, looking back at it, I would definitely challenge that and say that you would probably be surprised at some of the things that students come up with. So don't try and limit it right away to say, okay, well, I only have some social media stuff that I want them to work on. Like, just be a little bit more open-minded and kind of see if there are other things that maybe have been done a certain way for so long and that could use a fresh set of eyes. Secondly, I think trying to identify what the overall purpose of the partnerships and the projects is. So for us, like, do you want to engage with students because you want to potentially recruit some after the engagement's over? Or do you want to engage with students because you specifically have a business problem that you want some assistance with? And I think being able to identify what the overall purpose is will help you figure out exactly what route you want to take in terms of the type of project that you want to run. And just to kind of add on to the last point, another thing that I think is important is flexibility. So a lot of the professors that you work with, they all have very different courses and different curriculums, different delivery methods. There's so many things that change depending on who you're working with. So I think if you have an understanding of the type of project that you want to run, just know that it may evolve throughout the project. There might be things that the professor wants you to add. And I think from an employer perspective, I think it's important for us too to kind of be flexible in that sense, because they do have a curriculum and they do have learning objectives that they want the students to kind of focus on. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I would say that while I had projects in mind, and I still have a gazillion more that I just can't manage that many projects at once, but it is still an iterative process. And so sometimes I went in with a general idea, but then in talking to the professor, it's like, well, here's what my students do or can do, or what this class is all about. And so we modified it a little bit, that it still is very useful to us and works for them too.
So I'm curious to hear about some of the things, and Vicky, you spoke to this already, but what are some of the things that have come out of student projects that you've implemented within your business? And kind of as a second question, that did working with students through Ripen change your perception of areas that you thought students would be able to have an impact on?
I definitely think so. I feel like students now are so much more creative and strategic compared to when I was in school. I felt like it was all just essays and exams. I feel like there's so many opportunities now for them to really develop those critical skills that are going to help them post-graduation. I definitely didn't know how things were going to go when we ran our first project, but I can absolutely say that I was very surprised with the results that we had. They always come back with some sort of idea. There are some things that are repetitive, but of course, if you're having 100 students work on a project, there are going to be some ideas that are coming up multiple times. But I would say that every time we run a project, there's always at least 3 to 5 new ideas that our team hasn't thought of. So for example, when we ran our national recruiting project with an HR class out of McMaster, we asked them to look at our recruitment strategy, figure out what we could be doing better, and they came up with a job board, or a career job board, that was linked to basically all universities and colleges across Canada, that we could post our opportunity on once, and it would be spread out to all of the schools. And that was something that we probably would have never come across unless someone else had brought it up. There's other like groups on LinkedIn that we didn't know existed that we were able to connect to and just kind of start building our networks from there. So I would definitely say that the ideas that they come up with are things that we wouldn't have.
Yeah, it feels like we're tapping into a brain trust that is pretty vast and is going to definitely add another dimension to any business. I think, you know, I've only completed 2 projects, and those 2 projects, I was very happy with the results. Even though the website, we still don't have it implemented, I'm probably going to do that project again with another group in the fall and actually get my website changed and finished and have them actually implement the changes, I hope. But the survey, you know, that worked out great, and I'll definitely do that one again. But what's really interesting is, you know, thinking of all the different ways, like Stacey mentioned, that they're going to come up with ideas that you didn't even imagine, and that's really exciting. Mm-hmm. So it's just an amazing opportunity to have really smart people work on your issues for free or sometimes paid, but I haven't yet paid any of the interns or students. It's been free for me, except for the small amount of money that I paid Ripen up front that was, you know, well worth it.
That's awesome. And I love that, because I think so many people that we've met are not sure what students can do. And they're like, well, they haven't graduated yet. They don't have any experience. And I find it's always amazing, at least in the projects that we've done as well, to see how much you haven't thought of. And I actually think in some cases that lack of experience can also serve as something that makes them a little bit more creative, because they don't necessarily know what isn't possible. So that combination as well is so powerful. We have a question that I'll pose to both of you about how long projects last. So I know both of your projects have been a little bit different, but if you could give a range. And then I'll also ask, what amount of time did you spend on actually managing these projects? And what was that relationship like with the students and the professors?
I think it depends on the class and the professor. So the majority of the projects that we run are throughout the entire length of the semester. So you have a project kickoff with the professor and the students, and then you will work with them throughout the semester, or maybe a couple hours a week through email, or you can do phone calls with the student group leaders, whatever you kind of set up with the professor. And then you can either, well, we used to go in person for final submissions and final presentations and all that stuff, but now it's mostly done virtually. So the majority of the projects that we've done have lasted throughout the entire semester, but then we've also done a couple engagements with like an MBA class where they have a 2-week project, and that's basically all they work on for that 2-week period. And it's much more intense on the student side of things, but at the same time, as the employer, you kind of have to be a bit more available for the students if they have any questions throughout that 2-week period. But at the same time, like for those intense projects, I would say you're not spending more than 3 to 4 hours a week. And that's mostly because when you start the project, you kind of set expectations in terms of the communication method, if you prefer to answer emails, or if you want the professor to kind of gather all of the student questions into a Word document and send it to you so you can answer them all at once. It's all stuff that you can kind of work out with the professor or the students just to make it easier for everybody.
The initial projects, I think they were 8 weeks long, but there's others that are a full semester depending on the school, depending on what their schedule is, depending on the country. Right now I've got 3 summer projects going that are, I don't know, what are they, 5 or 6 weeks, something like that. So it's really, it's dependent on whoever you partner with and what their schedule is.
Yeah, for sure. And to add the ripen answer there as well, is they vary. So most of them we'll see throughout the course of the entire semester, which tends to be the project itself about 2 or 3 months. But some of them are a little bit shorter than that, especially the ones that happen during the summer, which will be just a few weeks. But we typically work with our partners as well to figure out, some businesses have times when you're like, absolutely not. For example, tax season, probably not a good time. So we can work with businesses as well to figure out when the best timing for projects is. So I want to ask about what advice you would have for someone who's not worked with students before or hasn't really done this in the past. What are some things that you've learned about students and doing this type of project that if you were to start from scratch, you would do things differently?
I'm not sure if there's anything that I would do differently, because I feel like the way that we experienced it from the beginning, so being honest with ourselves and with the professors and having that dedicated account manager too that Vicky had talked about, they really set you up for success from the beginning. And you do need to take some time to find your footing. But like I had mentioned, is I think as long as you're open-minded and flexible in terms of working with the professor and just kind of making sure that everything fits together so that your expectations and their expectations are being met, and just having an open line of communication throughout the entire project, I think is almost foolproof, because it really just makes sure that everybody's being heard and everyone's on the same page, and that there aren't any like misunderstandings throughout the project.
Yeah, I agree with Stacey that definitely having that, account manager, customer service person on the ripen end was key. I wouldn't try to do it without that. And I didn't even realize that that was an option until you started advertising free services. And of course, I recommended it to everybody that I know. And I even sent it out to, to my mailing list as, a value add. But I think that some of those people then logged on and tried to create their account, and then they just kind of stalled from there. So you definitely right now, I think you really get the value when you invest just a little bit and have a dedicated person on the ripen side to work with. And then other than that, it was not that difficult. I had an initial meeting with whoever the teacher was, or in some cases it was a dedicated person at each university that is the person that handles ripen outreach. That was an initial call. And then once I got working with the students, we decide amongst ourselves how often it seemed that it would be necessary to meet. So some groups I met just like a few times over 2 months. I met with them maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks on a Zoom call, and then we did some emailing. Right now I've got groups, they have a very short time frame to do their project, and we're meeting either once a week on Zoom or twice a week on Zoom.
So yeah, thank you both. That's good advice, I think, as well, to work with the group at the beginning to set up the process. And I think for those instances where there is a professor involved, for sure, making sure that you're working with them and communicating with them, because we find that they can be really helpful as well in directing the students.
I've loved all the teachers that we've worked with as well.
Yeah, actually, that's a really great question. Yeah. What role did working with a professor play for both of you as part of that experience?
I think it was really interesting working with professors because they're very excited and very grateful for the opportunity to be able to provide this kind of experience to their students. So they are also very flexible and wanting to make things work because they just want to give students that opportunity that really will help them develop their skills. And I find that we do have a lot of repeat professors that come back and say, we had a lot of really great comments from the students last semester. They had a really awesome time working on your project. And they come back and they say that they would like to participate again, whether it's the same project or with a different one. I can honestly say that I haven't had a single negative experience with a professor, just based on that fact that they really see this as a great opportunity for their students.
Yeah, the professors are delightful to work with. You have to remember that they've also picked your project.
Yeah.
So it's something that they're interested in, or that their students are interested in, or that fits nicely into the scope of their coursework. And I think also because now everything must be virtual, it's a great help to them to have these, you know, virtual experiences for their students, because online learning, you know, has its problems, and this is one way to make perfect sense out of online learning.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And also, I think both of you have had experiences working with students in a completely remote setting, both pre-COVID and then post-COVID. How do you find that virtual communication has been? Like, did it matter at all that the students weren't in the same place as you? And what are some strategies you use to navigate that?
For us, it doesn't really matter. The only thing is that we do miss kind of the in-person interaction, just because our directors did enjoy going in and speaking to the class and being able to meet them in person. Because I feel like with some virtual tools, it's a bit more difficult to have a more one-on-one conversation and just kind of say hello or whatever it may be before or after project kickoff that we would normally have in a class. But yeah, like we've done both. We used to do a lot of in-person stuff, and I would also do some of the virtual ones. I find that virtually we have a lot more interaction though, because it's easier to send a quick email, or it's easy to just get on a Skype chat with a student and just kind of chat, rather than being able to go and talk to them in person and then not seeing them again until like the end of the project. So yeah, for us, like I really don't mind doing the virtual stuff because I find that I get to talk to more students more often. So yeah, no issues on our end at all.
None of the students I've worked with have been geographically desirable that I would have been able to meet with them in person. And also, since I signed up, and it hasn't been that long that I've been working with Ripen, it's really only a few months, it was assumed that it was going to be virtual, and so I didn't think about that. But of course, then when you design your course, you're imagining the project. You're imagining that, of course, it's going to be virtual. So for me, it's been very easy. In fact, I make the students, you know, send me the Zoom link, because you know the person who has our Zoom link in my company is also working virtually. And I'd have to like get it from him with the password and arrange times, and I don't want to deal with that. So I just tell the students, invite me to your Zoom, and they do. It's
For
easy.
sure. I think that's a good experience for them too, since I would comfortably say that at least 20% of my job is setting up Zoom meetings. So they'll be doing that for a while. So we've got a question here, and I'll encourage everyone, we are moving towards the Q&A period. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. But we have one of the attendees wondering, what is the advantage of using Ripen over working with career services at a local college? And I know, Stacey, you probably have a lot of experience with this. Vicky, I'm not sure if you had tried working with career offices, but what would you both say to that?
I would say that it's just much more easy to facilitate the relationship. So rather than me having to reach out and trying to find contacts at every single career center at a college or university, it's kind of all in one place. And the people that are on Ripen are there for a reason. They want to make connections with employers. They want to run projects. They want to give their students those experiential learning opportunities, compared to me kind of crossing my fingers, reaching out to, say, a local college and trying to sell them on the idea of, okay, well, we could run a project and then you could put this into their curriculum and this is how it would work. I just feel like having all of the courses, professors on the marketplace, it's such an easy interaction, and it's just easy to facilitate that way, compared to just me trying to do all that on my own.
Yeah, I totally agree with Stacey. It's taken all the work out of it. It's just pure joy because it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there were a few little, times that, but again, Ripen stepped in and just made everything happen. So and you have access to so many more universities with students at every level, PhDs, masters, undergraduates in all kinds of different countries, all different levels, community colleges and top universities. It's pretty amazing. And it's just easy.
Mm-hmm. And the account reps too, because Vicky, like you had mentioned, the account reps are always suggesting or sending you links to courses that relate to exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
So that almost takes out even more work on our end, is that the account managers are going on and finding what aligns with what our goals are and saying, hey, you might want to submit a project here, and it's just easy as a click of a button.
They do. And if you have any little problem, they're Johnny on the spot. They make everything work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I mean, that makes me glad to hear, and I will definitely relay the message back. I'm sure they will be super glad to hear that as well. So I think I want to start wrapping up here. Thank you both so much for attending and for sharing your insights with us. I know there's a lot of students that you've both worked with, and collectively you've created a lot of real world experiences. So we certainly appreciate you being on the platform, but also taking the time today to share what you've learned and the impact that it's had on your businesses. So for those of you who are on the call and are interested in learning more about Ripen, I would say visit us at our website. You are able to sign up for free. As Vicky mentioned, we've recently introduced a tier. It's available until the end of July. So you can sign up and try out the advanced option. And then you're still welcome to upgrade if you do find that you require one of our account manager support. But there are also templates and other options to help you through the platform. And there's always us who are available to reach out to you and help. So thank you everybody for attending. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you, Stacey and Vicky, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.